The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
Welcome to another episode of the Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker in New York, in Woodstock to be precise. And guys, you've got just me this episode, so if you don't like it, stuff it. Well, just to be honest with you, Tom, my co-host, the snapper, is, as usual, hungover. And so, I think we should all club together to get him a lifetime supply of H-proof. Because, he's in denial. But occasionally he sleeps through a podcast, which you've all experienced. But here right now, it's just me and you, and we have an amazing episode. We have a fantastic guest. My drink's going to give it away. But then again, you probably already know who it is because that's why you're listening. And I am in sort of completely, I guess I'm just, I don't know, in my own world when I like to imagine that you don't know who the guest is. And I've been doing this for years, and I have suddenly realized, of course you know who the damn guest is. It's written on the podcast. It's right there when you go to click it. The name is there. Unless, of course, you subscribe and it automatically comes on and you want a surprise. And you're like, it's Christmas and you don't want to shake the present. You just want to unwrap it. Or you're one of those kids who goes looking for his gifts. Don't do that. Listen to my drink, get inspired, and maybe you'll know who the artist is. So talking about drinks, I am drinking, and here's my big giveaway, because I love a theme. I'm drinking a country breeze. A country breeze. And I know it sounds like an air freshener, a dodgy air freshener at a car wash. And you're like, oh no, my whole car's going to smell like country breeze now for the rest of the sort of, and I'm going to have the windows down as I drive just to get it out. But it's actually a rather charming drink. It's made of gin, and I used a pink gin from Gin Lane, one of my favorites. They've done a great collab with Cynthia Rowley recently, which if you're looking for a great gift for the holidays, check it out, because they give money back to cancer research and all sorts of great stuff. So that's Gin Lane. It's 1.5 ounces of Gin Lane. I also have 1/2 ounce of creme de cassis, and which is fabulous for color. It gives it a great little bit of flavor, a little bit of that raspberry. And check this out. 3 ounces of apple juice, people. Apple juice. It's a bit like a bramble. I've had a bramble on the show before, but brambles don't call for apple juice. And I squeeze fresh lime juice into that. So that's gin, creme de cassis, apple juice, and lime. I'm pretty darn good, I got to say. And I topped it off with a little bit of sparkling water. So here it is. It's fabulous. It's pink, pinky red, and delicious. I'm going to have a sip. Cheers, everybody. So if you're drinking along with me, chin, chin. Okay. So before we get to our guest, as we do on this show, booze news. Booze news this week, and we have a couple of interesting articles. First of all, Arby's, everyone's favorite place to get their fries, has decided that fries aren't enough. We need vodka flavored. French fried flavored vodka. That's exactly what we need, Arby's. And also in the news, Americans have been caught drinking in Rome in the Colosseum, and they have hit a huge fine. Now we're going to get to both of these articles. So let's first start with Arby's and their vodka. So, here's a quote from the guys at Arby's. They say, "Though we've mastered the art of drive-through fries, we wanted to take it one step further by making them 80% proof." Patrick Schwing said, Arby's chief marketing officer. Being a potato-based liquor, this limited edition vodka is infused with crinkle and curly fry flavor. So Arby's fans can enjoy our menu from bag to bottle. I mean, come on. Have you ever heard of anything so crazy? I mean, I love vodka and I love French fries. I don't love French fries in my vodka. Although it is fascinating. It does sort of make me wonder what is the potential of what else we could have. And I love a good fast food booze news. And I love alcohol and fast food. There's something about it that it always makes me laugh. It always seems completely out of the ordinary. That this one is taking it to a whole nother level. potato vodka as well. And now for Rome's most expensive beer. Well, these two Americans were caught in the Colosseum having a beer apparently at 5:30 in the morning, and they were spotted by some locals who went and told the Carabinieri, Italian police, who went and picked them up. Now, you're not allowed to drink in the Colosseum, and it does have a big fence all around it. So they clearly jumped over and thought, why not? We'll just have a beer in the Colosseum. Well, they were fined $900, I think, a piece. So that does now become probably one of the most expensive beers in Rome, and probably the most expensive beer they've ever had. So on that note, onto a rather extraordinary artist. Our guest this week is the Australian-born country singer-songwriter known for hit songs like Day Drunk and an album called Songs That We Drink To. He's clearly made for the Shaken and Stirred show. He's toured with artists like Taylor Swift, Dan and Shay and Rascal Flatts. Welcome, Morgan Evans. Morgan, how are you, mate?
Hey, mate, I'm great. It's great to be here and on the show. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure. You know, I've known about you for a hot minute. We have somebody in common, Chantal, who I'm not sure whether you've met her or not personally, but she's been hooking me up with the best country music people since like day one.
All right, cool. It's good to have someone like that in your life.
It is indeed very good. And she speaks very highly of you. And she's literally, as before I got on, she was DMing me saying, oh, he's great. He's got this going on. He's got that going on. He's just apparently announced a tour with Brad Paisley. And she interviewed you on the red carpet at CMT. And she had all this information, inside information. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, mate. Thanks. It's exciting times.
So tell us, you know, first of all, before we get into anything, and I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Cheers, by the way. What are you drinking? Have you got a drink near you?
Cheers. Yes, I've got a kind of a faux Paloma thing going on here at the moment. I would ordinarily have a margarita, but I found out a little late in the piece about the whole drink aspect of this show. But I do have some tequila here to talk about, and I have my recipe for my margarita that I am quite proud of as well.
What is your? Well, tell me both. First of all, the Paloma is the most popular tequila cocktail in Mexico. So if you're a Mexican, they don't drink margaritas; they like Palomas. How do you make your Paloma? I'd love to know.
Well, look, this is, I say it's a faux Paloma because it's really just a grapefruit seltzer and some tequila today. So it's a very, very basic situation, but it's doing the trick.
By the way, so this is the thing people get confused about. Everyone likes to get fancy with the Paloma, but the Paloma is not really a fancy drink. It is, for most Mexicans who make it, it is exactly that. It is grapefruit soda and tequila and then lime juice. And then if you want, you put in some simple syrup or some agave to sweeten it. But I don't do that because I don't like a sweet drink. But that's all it is. In the US, they've tried to make it really fancy. So people, freshly squeezed grapefruit juice. And that's not a Paloma, actually. Paloma is made with grapefruit soda. So it's not.
Here I am.
There you go, man. You're doing it right. You're straight off the bat. It's nothing faux. You're the real deal.
All right. Well, here I am, real deal, an Australian in America making the most popular cocktail in Mexico. Let's go.
Let's go. But before we move on, you said you like a margarita and you've got a recipe. So I want to hear the Morgan Evans margarita.
I do. When I discovered tequila and margaritas when I first started coming to the US, because tequila is not very popular in Australia. And so when I came here, I kind of started to discover it, and I just went down a rabbit hole and started experimenting. And it's not a crazy recipe, but my exact recipe is 2 shots of tequila, reposado preferred, 2 shots of lime juice freshly squeezed, 3/4 of a shot of Cointreau, and then 4 to 6 drops of the fair trade raw blue agave nectar. I'm not sure what brands you guys have, but there's like this particular brand. I could run and grab it.
I know exactly what that is. That's
crazy.
A good one.
Yeah, and it's the not the golden light one, the dark one. Right. To me is better. But that's just my thing. I that's not like any sort of like this is the way that we do it. This is just the way I like to do it.
Well, that's all it is. That's it. Dude, I tell you, a person who knows his drink and knows how to order, if you can go to a bar and you want a good margarita, you either rely on the odds of the bartender making you one, or you can say, this is how I like it, and then they can make it for you like that. And by the way, bartenders actually like that. People sometimes think that they don't want to be told. They love someone who knows what they want.
Right, a good bartender, right?
A good bartender, for
Yeah,
sure. Maybe
totally.
some poncy person is going to be like, oh, what's he telling me all about how to do this?
Yeah.
This is my job. But no, most bartenders like it, and they go, okay, here's a guy who knows what a
Yeah.
good drink is. And that sounds fabulous to me, by the way. So you said Australians don't like tequila. Why, first of all, do they not like it? And by the way, I grew up not liking it too. And what
Right.
do they like?
Well, I'm not sure. From what I can work out, that maybe whatever the trade agreement is with booze and Mexico and Australia makes tequila incredibly expensive in Australia. So if you're drinking a regularly priced bottle of tequila, it's probably not going to be of a high quality in Australia. So you're drinking the stuff that doesn't taste very good and probably gives you a bad hangover rather than the better stuff. And so it's just not as popular for that reason. It's cheaper to drink vodka or whiskey or rum too. Bundaberg rum is another big favorite for Aussies as well. It's Australian-made rum. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they're probably the main spirits of choice.
I'm not. But what I like about you is when you actually talk about your alcohol, you have a different smile for each one. Which I'm not quite sure what that even means. But I watched you just then, and you literally said vodka, and you kind of like did a little kind of thing with your eyes, and then you said, and then you went to rum, and you had this whole smile, like a story ran through your mind of some night that you drank that rum, or some moment, or some party. Am I wrong or am I right?
Yeah, the best story that I can't remember, probably something like that. Yeah.
I gotta love that. All right, look, enough about all this alcohol business. Let's move on to you and your music for us, and go from there. I'm sure the alcohol will come through the stories anyway, because you've got songs like Day Drunk, songs that we drink to. I mean, it goes on and on. But what are you going to tell me? What's up?
Well, I was just going to ask what you're drinking.
Oh, well, very charming of you. Why not? It's called a Country Breeze, my friend.
Okay. Tell me
Country
about
Breeze.
it.
Well, look at him. He's turning the whole table around and making me answer. Well, I've already announced everyone what I'm drinking. So on the show, I talk about the drink in advance, but it's gin, creme de cassis, apple juice, and squeezed lime. And I themed it over Country Breeze. Country, I'm clever like that. You see what I'm doing there? You see what I'm doing? I just did it for you. It's not really normally it's a bit sweeter than I normally like, but I'm like, what can I do that's a country themed kind of cocktail? So, just to welcome you. So cheers, by the way. There you go.
Cheers, mate. Nice to meet you.
Cheers, mate. Mm-hmm. We've had a few Aussies on this show. I do love an Aussie. That I guess the first thing that sort of struck me, and it's a stupid question because I know country music is all over the world. And I actually remember when I grew up in England, my aunt and uncle were big country fans and used to go to like country events. They would dress up as like country stars themselves. And they had those funny little, I don't know, strings you put around your neck with a little piece of metal. You pull up. And I was like, what are you guys wearing? What do you think you are? You think this is a Western? But they loved it. But, is country big in Australia? Is it a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as sort of present as it is here in the US, but it is one of those things that sort of growing up was a really passionate niche in Australia. And maybe over the last 15 years, I've seen it just every time I go home, it's bigger and bigger, and you're hearing it on like pop radio stations will have a country song every now and then, and you'll see all the big country artists go down there and tour and play all the big arenas and stuff down there. And so it has sort of become a big thing down there. Yeah. Whereas maybe growing up in Australia, it was a little more of a passionate niche thing.
See, from a passionate niche standpoint, as a kid, as a boy growing up, I mean, you clearly seem to be musical. I mean, I've read sort of stuff about you playing instruments and stuff when you were just a kid, small kid, by all accounts. Talk to us about, I guess, you as a kid growing up and when you first first got into music and then thought country.
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess everyone sort of just grows up listening to their parents' records, right? Like you kind of don't get a choice in that. And for me, I feel like there's like maybe 6 or 7 records that defined my childhood. And 3 of those were country music. And it was Glenn Campbell, the greatest hits, Garth Brooks, the greatest hits, and then one of the early greatest hits with the Eagles and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band as well, like something from the 70s that they did. So it was these 4 records, and it was those, and then it was Creedence and Led Zeppelin and Meatloaf.
Now you're talking.
Yeah, and so I grew up just listening to all of these records back to back, but not really knowing that was country and that was rock and roll and all that kind of thing. And I sort of loved music from a pretty young age. I feel like maybe my mum would have been a musician, but really never had the opportunity as a kid to learn. And so as a reaction to that, my brother and sister and I, she was always just like, hey, do you want to play an instrument, or do you want to go to a piano at school or whatever? And so we all picked up music at a young age, and that was sort of, I didn't make that choice for myself, really. It was just part of my life until I think 13 was the point where it kind of took over, and I was like, I want to play guitar. And I got a guitar and started playing and started a band that same day with my best mate from kindergarten. And my brother, I was 13, my brother was 11. We forced him to learn bass guitar. And, you know, before we knew it, we were in the garage making all this noise and sort of experimenting and playing. I mean, in that band, for the first 2 years, we played like surf punk, metal, rap, country, like everything. You know, we sort of learnt together like how to play music and what we loved. And so the more we played, the more it just sort of gravitated towards songs with choruses and melodies. And my brother was the first singer of the band, and then I guess maybe he hit puberty, and so I took over singing. And man, I mean, I guess
hilarious.
When you sing, it started coming out country, and probably as a result of all the stuff that I grew up on. And as cheesy as it sounds, I was probably about 15 or 16 when my mom dragged me along to a Keith Urban concert in my hometown.
Legend.
And that was the first time I'd seen all that rock and roll and all that old country music all put together for the first time. He was sort of doing this country music, but with like a rock swagger and like big guitars and solos and like heavy drums. And that was probably the light bulb moment that started my whole like, oh, where did that come from? And sort of set my sights on, oh, that stuff that I love is coming from Nashville. I'm going to check that out.
Did you have I mean, I got to say, just by, again, you're doing that thing when you reminisce or you think about something that you're smiling, which I got to say I love. It's you know, I do a lot of interview a lot of people. I think people, they're either so programmed to answer questions sometimes, or they've heard things, but you seem to have a real love of life. And when you're thinking back, that smile that comes over you, it makes me feel that you're really thinking about good memories and great. I mean, it must be, you were playing music. I guess that was what you wanted to do. It's such a charming thing, by the way. But did you have a lovely childhood? Was it great? Do you think like, oh my God, I wish I could go back? Or, I mean, what was your childhood like as far as like, you know, enjoyment factor?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think probably why I was smiling then was because I was remembering music as just pure joy. Like it wasn't my job. It never stressed me out. It couldn't be loud enough. It was just all possibility. And just, I remember, I mean, we used to just jam for hours in my parents' garage. Like the whole street could hear us playing. There was no sound proofing or anything like that. And it was just like music for the pure joy of it. And sometimes I feel like when you do it for a living, you know, or you're writing every day, or you're on the road and you're tired and you got to get up and whatever, do press at 5:30 in the morning, you kind of can lose sight of that. And it's fun to sort of reminisce on those times. And just remember the way that music made me feel then, and try to still find that in what I do. That was probably the smile that you saw then. I've also feel really lucky to have had my brother in my band. We played in a band for 10 years and traveled all over Australia and New Zealand together. And that was such a, you know, living over here now and having not seen my family for 2 years because of COVID and all that, I really sort of cherish that time that we got to spend together and do all that cool stuff together.
No, for sure. That must be difficult. That must be hard. I mean, do you find there's a sort of element of culture shock living over here permanently? You know, are you completely sort of, I guess in the groove of what it's like to live here, or do you still get rubbed up the wrong way? Because most Aussies, I know, are really relaxed, sort of fun-going, fun-seeking people too. And sometimes, the American rat race in general can be, it's like it's business, even when it's meant to be fun.
Yeah. There's definitely things like that are culture shocky for sure. I mean, less shocky because I've been here for 6 years now, and I feel like I kind of come to expect it. But yeah, it's kind of what I love and what I don't love about Nashville. It's that the idea that I can be in this town and people ask me, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I do music. And it's like, cool, that's great. And whereas, if I'm in my hometown and they say, what do you do? I do music. The question is, what else? And so that's a very different perspective. But at the same time, like you say, it does become a business sometimes. So it's really nice to, as I said, like have moments like that where you reminisce or I'm going to catch up with some old mates out in LA this weekend. And one of them I grew up playing bands in bands with in my hometown. And so it's nice to have moments like that in life to sort of just remind yourself, hey, this is super fun. And I will say something happened this year that hasn't happened for a while. I grew up, when I say at 13, I was like, I didn't want to go and be a singer-songwriter and sit on stools and play acoustic guitar. I wanted to play guitar in a band. And when I moved to Nashville, I left my Australian band behind. They all had wives and kids, and I just played solo with the loop pedal for 4 years. And just this year, I put a band together in America, and we just finished this 36-state tour last week. And I got to say that the joy of playing music and having that shared experience and turning up loud, and it's really all come back in the last few months, and that's a really good feeling.
No, congratulations, and it's your music sounds amazing. I can tell that you're on a buzz with the music too, just in your enthusiasm. It's infectious. And I've obviously some people might watch this podcast, but other people will be mostly listening to it, and I'll say it again, but Morgan is, he has a wry smile. You have a whole kind of slew of different smiles. Now you mentioned, I guess in Australia where people will say, oh, what you do for a living, and you're like, oh, I'm a musician, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, what else do you do, type of thing.
Right.
I'm originally a photographer, and that's what I've been doing all my life. And people will say to me, oh yeah, and what else do you do? Because it's sort of one of those gigs as well where really photography, that's like a hobby or something. It's not like it's a side thing. It's like a humanities course. It's not an actual thing.
Right, totally. And it's funny because so much of the joy of photography, I'm sure, is the same as music. It's just like, I'm doing this because I love to do this. Whereas like when it becomes your world or your career or whatever word you want to give it, then sometimes you have to do it whether you feel like doing it or not. And so that's the balance.
Do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome? Where you sort of can't believe that you are doing what you're doing? And I say that because I've often sort of looked around and gone, how am I sort of here? Because my brothers work in finance and in accounting and in insurance, and and they look at me, and they're the ones too who are like, "What do you do again?" Because they sort of see what I'm doing, and I'm like doing a podcast, or I write some crazy book, or I do, I'm doing some TV show, or whatever it might be. And someone like yourself too, people are probably like, do you ever feel like, what am I doing, or how am I here, and maybe I shouldn't be? I'm not deserving, or something.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about this. I was asked about that a couple of years ago, and I said no. But I did start to have it at the end of 2019. We had because I've been doing this for so long, right? And it's always been like, hey, I need to like prove myself here. I need to prove myself here. I need to make sure that I'm deserving of this situation. This needs to be the best show I've ever played. Like I want every show that I do to be the best show I've ever played. Every record I make to be the best record I've ever made. And I've always been opening for people. And I feel like since I moved to America, I've been opening for people for the first 5 years. And then at the end of 2019, we did this world tour, and they were all headline dates, like 30-something dates around the US, the UK. We did one in Germany, and then we did Australia and New Zealand. And on those shows I did, the sold out, everyone's there. Like I have every reason to feel confident walking on the stage. And that's the night when I get that. I'm like,
wow.
Oh, okay, right. This is it. This is me tonight, and that was, I was playing those shows solo too. So it was just like they were the nights when like that feeling you're talking about did creep in, and I felt that for the first time. And I think I really tried to just stop and kind of enjoy that feeling, because I hadn't felt it before. And
Do you ever get?
It was
Tell
cool.
me what
I
that feeling
enjoyed it.
is like, though, because I've interviewed boxers too, and I've asked them, like, when you step into the ring, like, first of all, what do you do to step into the ring? Because I want to know. And then secondly, when you're in the ring and you look around and there's everyone there looking at you, I mean, it's a similar kind of vibe, right? You got to step on. You can hear the crowd, and you
Yeah.
know that when you step on, you're about to see like all these people looking at you with anticipation. I mean,
Yeah.
so what do you do to prep? What is your like, the Morgan Evan, like, do you do a warm up? Do you like alternate nasal breathing or something? What do you do?
Well, I mean, now with the band, we have, we just always make sure there's a room backstage, and we set up all of our sort of B rigs. So like a couple of drums and a little bass amp and some guitar amps, and we just jam. And so we're already playing music before we go on. We feel warm. But when I was doing the solo stuff, I couldn't do that. So I was kind of mentally preparing to just not mess up the first song. And then, I mean, once the show starts and you sing the first note and the first things all in time and all that, I mean, it's just fun to be in it. Like that's the whole goal, just be in it. But there is that moment right before you walk on, and then hitting those first few notes and getting them right. That to me, that's the hurdle. But once you're over that, I mean, those shows in 2019 were my favorite shows I've ever played. And I specifically think of one in Sydney at this place called the Enmore Theatre. And it was the place that I grew up going to shows. I would drive down from my hometown in Newcastle 2 hours, and we would go see, I saw Keith Urban there. I saw like Ryan Adams there and Good Charlotte there, like all those like different phases of my life. Like I would see bands there. And so that was like kind of one of those ones where I was like, oh man, like I wish I had the dudes that I played with growing up to go play this show. But yeah, as I said, after we did that first note, the first bar was in time on the loop pedal. It was just pure joy for the rest of the night.
It must have been an extraordinary feeling to have been there to see all those epic bands, and then you are now the band that people are coming to listen to, and you know that there will be kids, probably someone even like yourself, who was like, I remember when I saw Morgan Evans there, and that's pretty crazy in a way. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that's got to be an amazing feeling for you.
Yeah, that's the imposter syndrome moment when you're backstage and you see all these other bands that have played at this place, and you're like, oh, hang on a second, like one of us is not like the others. That's the imposter feeling that I think I'm talking about. And,
so do you, when you're up on stage, do you ever, or do you try not to find people in the audience, or do you make eye contact with someone? Does it throw you?
No, I love that actually. In a big crowd. I love that. Like in a sea of faces, I love to kind of really try to connect with people. That's one of the things I love about playing with the band as opposed to the loop pedal, is I can look up. I don't have to be looking down at these pedals anymore. But I will say in smaller rooms, like if we're doing some sort of, pre-show smaller hang or a press thing or whatever, and you can actually sort of see each other really close, that's an awful thing. I try not to look in that situation. For some reason, that's way more difficult. But no, that connection, I think, is what feeds me as a musician, a live performer. And one of the things I noticed actually, after having a year and a half off because of COVID, and then when the shows came back sort of a few months ago here in the States, I was ready to go out and feel like pumped to play, and the band was ready. The whole crew we were ready to be just having the best night ever, but I wasn't prepared for how stoked everyone in the audience would be. And there's been this really unique thing the last couple of months playing, where we're playing our first shows back, but the audience is seeing their first shows back too, and they're just as happy as we are. So that energy exchange has been sort of bigger than it ever has been. And that's been a really nice feeling too, of like, hey, we're back here, we're doing this, and this is the magic we missed. And it's a bunch of people standing next to each other that don't care like who they voted for or what they posted on Twitter that day. They're all just there like singing and drinking and just having a great time. And there's some real magic in that, and it's been a real pleasure to play those shows.
No, for sure. I mean, obviously with what happened at Astro World, there's been like, people who are now obviously a little scared of going to concerts. And I know that even my own in-laws recently were going to go to a big concert in Mobile, Alabama, with multiple big bands playing, but there were going to be, I think, 40,000 people there at the event, and they were encouraging tailgating, and 5 hours before the concert began, a lot of drinking, and I think that just sometimes that there is a nervousness. And one, we're already nervous about being around that many people, but two, when you hear of the sort of stampede situation or something like that happening, is that something which obviously perturbs you in some way? Are there things that anyone can do to try and stop that from happening? Are there better ways to manage it, do you think?
Well, man, I mean, I'm aware of the what you're talking about. I don't know the details of it per se, but I remember there's this concert in Australia called the Big Day Out. It was the biggest kind of indie rock, heavy rock, sort of pop rock festival for a long time in sort of late 90s, early 2000s. And I remember one year, I think 1 or 2 people died for the same reason. And so I remember all this stuff about, hey, if you have like the T barricade here, and they had all this kind of science or whatever you want to call it of ways to stop that from happening. And it never happened again in Australia after that. But I'm not sure what sort of strategies they had in play at that show. So I can't really comment directly on that. But
I mean, it's one of those things that is, I'm always slightly claustrophobic myself. I'm never, so when I see in big groups of people, I'm always a little freaked out in general. So obviously there are ways around it. I love going to concerts. Nothing I love more than live music. But I remember being in a Global Citizen concert in Central Park, and literally someone just was sitting on a barricade, and the barricade fell over, and the noise of the barricade falling over sounded like a gunshot, and there was a huge stampede of people likewise, and they shut down Global Citizen for over an hour and 20 minutes, I think, and no one was killed, thank God, but people were injured, and people did. Even friends of mine lost their like one of my friends lost his shoe completely and had to sort of go home shoeless, or one shoe, hopping along, and just was really rattled. And I just heard from a friend of mine that their child who was there with them, who was like a 13-year-old boy watching the concert, actually had to go into therapy for over a year because of what happened. They felt so traumatized by it. But it's one of those things when you get in those sort of massive group situations. Do you like the big concerts, or do you have a preference for the smaller? I mean, I've seen photographs that your wife's taken of you at the Ryman and places like that. That I would imagine is a smaller venue, but obviously a real classic one. But
yeah. Man, I don't know. I love both, all. I want to keep playing all kinds of venues. I think the biggest show we played this year was in Chicago, and it was called the Lake Shake Festival, and there was probably 25,000 people there. And I mean, the energy, and like, it was kind of at sunset we played, like that kind of energy is just so fun. I don't think there was any crowd issues at that. Like, I didn't see, like, you can see a crowd that is kind of pushed together, moving as one. I didn't see any of that, thankfully, and it was all very friendly and lighthearted and fun. But I love that. But I love that just as much as I loved, we've just been out with Brett Eldridge, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's like a crooner, kind of like amazing singer guy. And we played some of the oldest theaters in America. We played this 110-year-old theater in Philly, and playing in places like that is amazing for another reason. There's just so much history you can feel on those stages. And yeah, man, I'm into all of it. And the Ryman, that's a bucket list for me, to headline the Ryman one day. I haven't done it yet. I'm not sure when I will, but yeah, that's a really special place to play and to watch music.
Yeah, I photographed Taylor Swift at the Ryman for a book that I did with Taylor, and I know that you have actually been on tour with Taylor, right? So you were you opening for her, or what part of the act were you?
Yeah, man, I put out my first single ever, and kind of the first tour I did was with Taylor, and she'd booked this tour in Australia. This was 2009, so it was a long time ago. And she'd booked this tour before Love Story had come out. And so we were playing 1,500 capacity kind of places in Australia. And between booking the tour and then she put out Love Story. And so by the time she was coming to play, she probably could have played the arena down the road, but we were playing these places and it was just insane. Like the closest thing to probably, you know, the height of the Beatles that I'll ever see was playing those shows. I mean, you would put like, my guitar player would like put his leg out from the backstage to walk on stage as the opening act. And the scream from the crowd would just be like at 11 or 12. It was that was a pretty insane time. I really didn't know the magnitude of what was going on that tour. All I knew is that we had a great time. We had a great time doing it.
She's no doubt a major star and sort of, you know, has been a kind of game changer in many respects for the business, making it very poppy and very kind of accessible to a huge new audience that now consider themselves country fans in large part because of artists like Taylor. You know, amazing. You know, obviously you yourself are married to a well-known artist, Kelsey Ballerini. When you met her, I don't want to, you know, this is about you more than anything, but I want to know, was it love at first sight? Don't spit your drink. You can't spit your drink when I ask that question.
I don't know, mate. I'll look. We'd met a couple of times super briefly. Like I'd hosted the Country Music Awards of Australia, I think twice, and then I was going home to do it for a third time, and they called me and they're like, "Hey, we're thinking we want to get you an international co-host this year to host the awards with you." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, who are you thinking?" And when they said her name, I did think that would be pretty cool. I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll be okay with that." And so we met a couple of times really briefly to take some promo shots or whatever, but that was literally 5 minutes, you know. And then when we hosted the awards together, it was one of those.
You didn't feel the chemistry then, those photos, like that?
Oh, look, man, I don't know. We were probably just both so nervous and awkward that we had no idea what was going on in those situations, if I'm honest. But the hosting the awards thing was great because, you know, two people that are kind of nervous and awkward are forced to spend these days together rehearsing, getting the show right. And then, of course, like hosting a live TV special is a pretty kind of heightened experience. You know, there's a lot that can go wrong, and if you pull it off, it's like a big achievement. And so I think it wasn't till after we got through hosting the show, we were in the dressing room, and I think she came by and we were like doing a cheers with some tequila, actually, to just say like congratulations to each other. And as that moment progressed, people kept walking by. So like her manager came by, so he came in and we did a shot. And then the producer of the show came in, the scriptwriter of the show came in. So we ended up having all this tequila. And then, you know, after that much tequila, you can kind of, it's a little easier to be honest with each other. And yeah, man, I think that was the Thursday night. We saw each other play over the weekend. And then by the following Wednesday, we were back in Nashville and we went on our first date. And I guess the rest is history. As I say.
You go. I love that. What a great story. What a great story. And it's funny, tequila, the truth serum. Except that when you wake up the next day and you like, shit, did I say that? I didn't mean to, you know, like, I wouldn't have said that like that if I had known. Oh my God, that's so good. I was going to wonder. So is she a Paloma fan as well, or does she like your Margarita?
Oh, she likes both. Yeah. She's a big fan of the Margarita. The Margarita is pretty strong, though. It's dangerous. It's dangerous territory once you're committed, once you go in there. But yeah, we're both tequila fans for sure.
2 shots. I remember you saying. That's crazy. Now, before you got into music, I read that you almost became a lawyer, right? What's that? Is that true?
That might be a stretch. I did do law school for a year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it for long enough to be like. I had a meeting with the head of the faculty. I'm not sure what his exact title was. His name is Ken. He's a good fella, long white beard, exactly what you would imagine in a professor. And I sat down with him one day and it's just like, "How are you going, mate? How are you going with everything?" I was like, "Oh, you know, all right." And he's like, "You're not in class very often. What have you been up to?" I'm like, "Oh, we've been touring. My band was touring at the time." And so he was like, "All right. Do you like that better?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You should probably just go do that." And so I took his advice and went and did it. So yeah, I'll always appreciate that. I had a little crack at it, but it just wasn't for me, man. There's different things for different people. And you know, growing up in a sort of really working class town, I think it's like that whole thing, like, what else do you do? And so I was trying to find my what else at that time, and thankfully I didn't find one.
Well, you've got to have a pretty good mind, though, to even think about doing law. So, I mean, that's a sort of little secret talent of yours that, you have a better look when you're looking at your contracts. You're able to look at them a little bit harder and be like, that doesn't look right.
I don't know. Maybe I ask more questions than I should. I don't know. But I enjoy having a lawyer that knows that now. Let's put it that way.
For sure, 100%. So I mentioned at the top of the show, some of the songs that you've written, and you reference drinking a lot, right? So certainly you've got Day Drunk, which is a big song of yours, and Things That We Drink To. I guess, how do you come up with a song like Day Drunk? Where's that? What's the inspiration? Talk us through a little bit about that song specifically, and then a little bit, I guess I'd like to hear too, your process.
Well, the drinking thing's funny, right? Because it was more that title was kind of more of a realization after the fact. Nashville is. Have you spent much time here in Nashville?
Actually, my mother-in-law lives in Nashville, and
okay.
As I mentioned, I shot Taylor Swift at the Ryman, and I've been a few times. I've been to the Grand Ole Opry. I've done a bunch of different things. So
right, well, it is a drinking town, right? That sort of goes hand in hand with country music. If you're going to go see a band, or if you're celebrating something or commiserating something, that's kind of just the way it goes here. And none of the songs on there are just straight up drinking songs. And I've never really wanted to write one of those, but I use it as a metaphor in all of these different songs. And I didn't realize until the album was done. I looked through and I was like, oh, wow, like I referenced, I use drinking as a metaphor there and there and there and there and there. And Day Drunk.
You love it.
Day Drunk's like the country version of like Afternoon Delight, That's kind of the point of that song. And yet at the same time, that chorus just turns into a drinking anthem at those outdoor festivals we get to play. So it's the best of both worlds for me. And Things That We Drink To was a song that I wrote about losing my manager of 10 years, a guy named Rob Potts, who was the guy that brought me to America for the first time. And he was the guy that brought Brooks and Dunn and Alan Jackson to Australia for the first time and started the big festival for the first time down there. And so when I lost him, we wrote that the day of his memorial service in Nashville. And so there are all these drinking references in these songs about other things in my life. And I think that was just a result of an Australian landing in Nashville and just falling into this crazy drinking culture that's here,
You obviously mentioned an Australian going to Nashville. It wasn't easy, was it? I mean, everything I've read that you talk about too, you talk about how when you first got there, it was tough being an artist, away from your family, away from your friends, away from your band, trying to make it in Nashville. It hasn't always been easy, right?
Right. Oh man, it's super tough. I mean, every part of that is really tough. It's kind of it's one of those, you land here in this town, all those things that you mentioned, but also the factor of this town, still to this day, it can be both inspiring or intimidating on any one day, because you're surrounded by the most talented people in the world, and so you kind of get to choose whether you're inspired or intimidated, and it's up to your kind of headspace to decide which one of those it's going to be. And it's funny, like just mental health has become a thing that is more talked about now, even more so than 6 years ago. And people talk about, aspects of depression or anxiety and all those kind of things. And not that I feel like I was crippled by them, but when people talk about those things, I'm like, oh yeah, I had that first year I was in America. Oh, totally. Oh yeah, is that what that is? Yeah, cool. And so there's definitely all those feelings and things that you deal with. And that's probably for anyone that moves across the world, away from their family, but also away from their support network. Like it wasn't like I could call my old mate and go for a beer and just sort of whatever, shoot the shit, watch the football game or whatever. It was all new friends, which was great and exciting in its own way. But what that saying is like, you can't make old friends, and it did take a while to sort of find my feet here, and it still doesn't feel as home did, but it's getting better. Sort of every week or every year, every month.
Are you an American yet?
I'm not. No, that's a really long long, arduous legal process, but I am legal. I have a green card here, so
But you
I'm
want to become an American, or you want to stay an Aussie?
Well, I think I'll do the dual thing. I think that's my goal, to do the dual thing. So then I don't have to worry
You can't tell
about...
the Americans that. You have to tell only the Aussies will let you. The Americans don't allow you to be a dual citizen. I'm not sure if you know that.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I'm English, but I'm an American, right? So what happens is that the UK allows me to keep both passports, right?
Okay.
So you keep your passport, but the Americans, when you become an American, you have to pledge allegiance to the flag, and you're not allowed to be from another country simultaneously. You in theory. So when you travel out of the US, you have to travel out on your American passport, and you have to when you check into that next country that you're flying to, you have to check in on your American passport, and it's tracked. So otherwise, you'd fly out as an American, and you would just disappear in the world, right? Because you would never have landed, because you wouldn't have checked in. So, you can get into big trouble, because I have friends of mine who have done exactly that, who have come back in, and the guy's like, "Where's the stamp of where you went?" And he's like, "Oh, I went in on my British passport." And they're like, "But you're either an American or you're British." Now, what you can do is you can land in England and then put your American passport aside, pick up your UK one, and travel all around Europe, come back to England, get back on the plane, and they know. So there are ways around these things, but one must pledge allegiance to the flag, and that is at that point you are so yeah.
Well, I do appreciate the advice. I may call you on my next step of this journey. I think I've got 2.5 years until I can apply for that.
So look, going back to your concerts before we let you go and do something else, but when you're trying to, I want to know, because I've always wondered how an artist selects the songs that they're going to sing and the order of them. Like, what do you? I mean, obviously your big hits, but and we've all been to concerts where people sing songs and you're like, oh God, I wish they'd just sing the stuff I love, or I don't, or sometimes they got a new album and it's great, but other times you're like, please just sing, Day Drunk or something. But how do you set your lineup?
Yeah, man. I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm definitely not at the stage in my career where I have too many hits to play. So I guess that makes the writing easy. You put the songs in that you think people will know the most. I will say one thing happened that was funny after quarantine. In the US, the most played song on radio and before quarantine happened, Kiss Somebody, the song of mine, Kiss Somebody, was easily the most sort of recognizable song. And so we would play that last every night. But after the first few shows back, we were like, hang on, Day Drunk is reacting way more. And it was nowhere near as big a radio kind of success here in States. And I realized, I was like, hang on, people have just been getting drunk every day for 1.5 years. This has probably been the soundtrack to that. And so we flipped them around, and now we played, or on this tour we played Kiss Somebody earlier, but Day Drunk at the end because of that. In terms of the other songs, man, I mean, you have to be selfish a little bit, right? Like there was new songs that I had that I wanted to play, and they hadn't even come out yet at the time. We were playing songs like Country Out of My Girl and Sing Along, Drink Along. And the single Love Is Real, before they were even out, they just came out on the EP we just put out. But it was fun to play new songs too, because you'd watch the audiences kind of pick them up, and you'd see the parts that people would react to, and you could adjust your set based on that. I don't think the set list is ever finished. That's probably the answer. I think every night we were kind of tweaking, trying to make it better. And as I said, wanting the next show to be the best show we'd ever played.
Does it depend on where you are in the world, though? Because I mean, I'm just wondering, like a UK audience or versus an Australian audience versus a Nashville audience, or does that really affect the perhaps the type of songs that you would sing? Or
maybe I will say what I've noticed in America, where country music is very present, and in any city in America, any weekend, you can see whoever you want to, the biggest country artist, insert the biggest country artist in the world here. Whereas when you go to the UK or Australia, it's much more of a special occasion when that happens. And so the people that come to the shows don't just know the songs they've heard on the radio, they know every song. And so I think you can be a little more, you can switch it up a little more in Australia or the UK, because you know that those people coming to the show are they've listened to everything, and maybe you can play some deeper cuts. Whereas in the US, you kind of want to play the stuff that they've heard maybe on the radio or on their playlist or whatever.
You know, you've done a cover before too, right? All I want for Christmas is a.
Yeah.
Are you down with covers? I mean, are you like, is that something that you do for fun, or you just, you know, do you do them regularly on tour as well?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I grew up sort of, I would play in cover bands or whatever. We were playing weddings when I was going through college and stuff like that, or university, depending on who's listening. But yeah, man, I think when I moved here, I was like, I'm only going to play songs that I wrote, you know. But I think at this point, it's fun to mess with them. That particular song, All I Want for Christmas Is You, has long been my favorite song of all time. I do think it's pretty unbeatable. Like that song's kind of invincible to me. And so the label actually that I'm on, Warner here in Nashville, were like, hey, we're doing a Christmas record, do you want to do a song on it? And I was like, yes, as long as it can be that song. And so that's sort of how that came about. But in the tour we just did, we incorporated a little cover moment too. And that song, Things That We Drink To, we sort of worked in a little bit of the Coldplay song Fix You, and it kind of has a similar sort of feeling, like as a kind of a mashup thing. But I'm not adverse to covers. No, that's probably the answer. As long as there's a reason for it, you know.
I like that song, What Last Christmas. It's George Michael, right?
Yeah. Wham, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Wham, even, yeah. No, that's a good one. I mean, you know, Christmas songs, as corny as they are, they're very nostalgic, right? They just definitely, you know, you can only listen to them for so long, but at the same time, it's like you can't wait to hear them when you do hear them.
Absolutely. And I think last year, because like it was just the worst year ever, I think Kelsey and I specifically were like, it was the end of October and we're like, yeah, it's pretty much Christmas, right? Yeah, okay, switch the playlist or whatever. And we just listened to it for 2 months, which was probably too long in retrospect, but it does give you a good feeling.
Wow, you guys are made for each other. That's crazy. I'm trusting that you know, the pandemic, you were good being in lockdown with Kelsey for, you know, for a long period of time. I know it was not easy for a lot of people to be stuck with their, you know, better half, necessarily, you know, in tight, you know, quarters.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, we saw probably more of each other in that year and a half than we would have in the next 10 years had we kept going, you know, with the speed that we were both touring and seeing each other, it would, I'm not even exaggerating, it was crazy. And then it was great in a lot of ways, and it was really challenging in other ways. We moved house, we were in an apartment because we were out of town all the time, and now we live in a house with a backyard, so the dog's stoked about that. And yeah, I think we got to know each other so much better. We were married for, 2 years, and then we went into quarantine together, and it was a great kind of learning experience, and I think we're definitely a lot better for it. So yeah, I'm grateful to have made it through that. It's probably the best way to put it.
So you've got a radio show too, right? Apple Music, countrywide radio. Is that something you're on doing at the moment?
Yes, I'm recording a show this afternoon, actually. It's fun, man. I don't know if you've listened to it. It's a show about country music all over the world.
Absolutely, congratulations. I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, I see you're up there with other legends doing other, you know, radio shows like similar to yours, but in other areas, and it's pretty impressive that you're doing it. So, what is that? What is it you love about it?
I think Apple approached me because I'm the non-American guy here in Nashville, and they were just like, "Hey, we want you to do a show. It can be whatever you want." And I've just always been really passionate. Maybe it's growing up in Australia when country music wasn't so present, or maybe wasn't so current or so international. And then watching that side of country music grow in Australia, it's just been so exciting, alongside the CMC Rocks Festival down there that's kind of led the way in that. And then the same thing I've seen, I've been to the UK a handful of times and played the C2C Festival one time as well in Glasgow and London, and it's super exciting. And I feel like for a lot of Americans are around, as I tour around, that they will ask me like, hey, is country music big in Australia? Which is kind of how we started this conversation. Is country music big in Australia? What's country music like in Australia? And I was like, I need to do a show that is the answer to that question, but for all over the world. And so it's been really cool to discover artists from, there's this fella from South Africa that we've been playing a lot, and a guy named Rowan Ash, and he has a deal here in Nashville now, and he's putting out music here now, and different
South
artists.
African country.
Yeah, he's great, man. He's really like amazing voice, and I'm sure you'll hear his music sooner rather than later, and just stuff like that all over the world. It's just so fun for me to learn about, and then also for me to share the stuff that I know from Australia as well.
That's so cool. I never, you just don't think of it that way. I always think of literally Nashville and the South, and I know that it exists elsewhere.
Yeah.
But even when I listen to your music, I would think I was listening to an American. I would not think I was listening to an Australian. That's,
Right.
You've definitely, people sing in obviously mostly sing in that American voice anyway. I mean, so many bands, it's impossible to tell. And you listen to Adele. Adele sings, not that she sounds like an American, but she sings in one voice, and then you hear her speak, and it's like that. Her singing voice and her speaking voice is so different. That you just would have no idea that that's how she would sound.
Yeah, that's a weird question. I get asked that a lot too. I think the answer is partly you grow up singing along to records, and whether that was the Beatles or whether that was Garth Brooks, you kind of sing in an American accent. I also found a YouTube video one time, and it told me something like the American accent, the vowel sounds are more pleasing to the human ear or something. I don't know how true that is, but
that's bullshit.
Yeah. In a music context.
Clearly it's English, for God's sake. That's ridiculous. They're not Australian. I'll give you that. Not American. We'll disagree on that. We'll just agree on it. There's two of us. No one's arguing. We'll just move on that one. Look, I've taken up a lot of your time, but before I let you go, we have one last thing called Last Orders on the Shaken and Stirred show. Sort of quick, fast, simple a series of questions. First one is, to life as it could be or to life as it should be?
Oh, are we drinking to this?
Oh, we can. We can drink to this as well, but it's more of a question. I love it though. But do you reckon you should live to the theory of life as it could be or life as it should be?
I think that is one of the delicate balances that you need to have a little of both in your life. I think that's one of those, like, to me, when I hear that, I hear like, am I happy with where I am? Or do I need to be there? And I feel like you need to have, that's a balance that I struggle to find, honestly. And I hope to find it better as I move forward. So I hope that's not too politically correct for you, but a little of each.
No, it's a perfectly decent answer, and it makes sense. I'm going to give you a simple one now because that last one threw you and you thought it was a drinking game. So, favorite board game? Favorite board game, Morgan?
Oh man, Yahtzee. We were playing Yahtzee a lot in lockdown.
Yahtzee, that's a good one. If you had to be a member of any band in history, any other band, you had to be a member of a band in history, which one would it be and why?
Wow. Man, I would probably be in the Zach Brown Band.
Which one?
The Zach Brown Band. They're a country jam band here. They're a huge act here in the US, but I just feel like they can do anything. There's like 7 or 8 of them or something like that, and it just seems like they're having fun.
There you go, Zach Brown. But it's funny, I don't know them, but I will check them out. I'm new myself to country music. I've kind of got into it in the past couple of years, and it's like I'm an old school rocker. So when you mentioned Led Zeppelin earlier and all those bands, that's like, I have photographs of Led Zeppelin in my house and the whole 9 yards. And, that's my whole world. But I like that.
Well, if I'm the guy that introduces you to Zach Brown Band, that makes me really happy. I hope you go and check it out.
I'm right after this. We're going to check them out.
The Foundation is the record you need to start with. That's their first one.
You heard it there. And final question, shaken or stirred?
Shaken.
And why?
It just seems like you get more done.
Can't put it more simply than that. Morgan Evans, everybody. Check him out. Songs That We Drink To, Day Drunk. In fact, he's got more songs about drinking than an Irish pub. But, well done, mate. Congratulations on everything. Where can people see you next?
Geez, man, we're sort of going into hiatus a little bit here, but we'll be on the road next year in the UK and some of Europe with Brad Paisley, in Australia with Brad Paisley too, and we'll be doing headline stuff in the US. So just social media or the website or any of that stuff, the dates will go up as soon as they're announced.
Absolutely brilliant. And we will also put them on our social media when this comes out too. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for listening to the Shaken and Stirred show. Morgan, thanks. Really. Cheers, mate. And have a really good one. And send my best to Kelsey.
Yeah, you too, mate. Lovely to chat to you.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers, bud.
Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
See ya.